Well, my sincere thanks to both the Taoiseach and the Minister for bringing us all here, for putting this project on the ground. And my thanks to Mary O'Kennedy for bringing me in to meet the Minister at the very beginning of his time in office, where the initial conversation between Mary and the Minister took place, which led to, I think, these events happening. So she has a particular role to play in this narrative as well, which I want to just recognise up front. To just go through very quickly, and I'll be able to take questions, any questions anybody wants to ask later on. Just some basic realities there about the world we live in Ireland. I think there was a general tendency to underestimate the significance of the non-governmental sector and the non-private profit sector of the Irish economy. Well, that's just some basic realities about it. It's a very sizable area. It represents about 6% of the employment in Ireland. It employs more people than the IT and the pharmaceutical industries combined, and it has great potential for growth within it. It's also a sector where, by and large, if you invest a euro, that euro stays in. It's a closed investment area. You have no great leakage into other economies, which is a characteristic of a lot of investment in a small open economy like Ireland. So it has a tremendous capacity and a tremendous return to foreign investment, one of the best there is. And as you can see, it's already quite sizable. It's fragile to a certain extent now, in that while there used to be an old tradition of philanthropy in Ireland, particularly in the 17th and 18th and 19th centuries, we've lost contact with that in the 20th century, because the families and the businesses with which we're associated with it are gone, and their tradition is largely gone as well. And the wealth that's in Ireland now is of a newer generation, starting probably in the 60s, coming through the 70s, 80s, and growing in volume in the 90s, first decade. And that is a whole generation of business and wealth which has, I think, to relearn the concept and the role of philanthropy, which is actually taking the world by storm. If any of you have been following the speeches and utterances of people like Bill Clinton and Tony Blair since they've left office, and thousands of others, and massive business people like Gates and Buffett and all the rest of them, this sector of the non-governmental, not-for-profit, call it what you wish, but it's not direct government action, and it's not the for-profit industry working in its for-profit capacity, is becoming a massive force for good and for development throughout the world. And consequently, we think it is ripe for reintroduction, if you like, into Ireland, where we know all about fundraising, and Irish has a well-earned reputation for generosity in that area. But within our corporate world, our high net worth individual world, the internal companies, the external companies that have set up in Ireland, they also have to learn, I think, relearn that a small amount of organised planned giving and philanthropy, a small proportion of the profits of the business, a small proportion of the surplus wealth of the individuals and families and so on and so forth, can make a massive and an enormous difference to the quality of the society within which all that work is done, leading to a tremendous enrichment for the individuals and for the entire population. So that is really the kind of a message we hope to develop. And the Minister took a very significant step when he re-established the forum. The members who came together, which represented the people involved in at least six government departments and all the major philanthropies in Ireland, showed a tremendous enthusiasm and commitment, and drew up these set of proposals, and have all individually or as organisations committed themselves to continue this work and to implement the proposal, which has got the blessing of the Taoiseach and the government. And that is an extraordinarily important commitment for me, because everybody who was on that forum has committed themselves to stay with the work and to see it through, so that it won't be yet another good idea that goes nowhere. We're determined that that won't happen. It has set out a basic target, which the Taoiseach referred to, up the level of giving. Now, bearing in mind that two of our great philanthropies which underpin the activities are actually moving out of the business, that's a much more challenging target than it appears. But unless we plan ahead, you're going to have, when Atlantic and the One Foundation cease their operations when their natural life cycle comes to an end, you're going to have a huge gap. It's up to us to make sure that that gap doesn't occur, and that the alternatives are already in place, and there will be a seamless transition from one phase to another phase. Three principles underlying the approach that Taoiseach has already referred generally to this. Ireland's recovery is everybody's business. It is not just the Eurocrats. It is not just the international and European bankers. It is not the IMF. It is not the norms of Zurich. It is not anybody or any other external or great power factor. It is the people of Ireland. Every single one of us have a contribution and a role to play in the recovery of our country. It is all of our business. We have to hark back to previous eras where we had Munchenich, the cooperative movements and all of that, where the citizenry of Ireland stood on its own 2 feet as a proud citizenry and helped to develop their communities and their countries and their services and families. Harking back a bit to that kind of old thinking, now that we are in a different no exclusions of this. We want people who have great wealth to contribute, and we want people who have no wealth at all, but who would be willing to do some work and to get involved to contribute. And all of those contributions have an equality of value and an equality and are equally a key part of this national movement we're trying to create. We believe we can move forward in this by doing 4 things. First of all, we're going to launch a national giving campaign which will help to define and help to explain. Secondly, put in place the right fiscal and knowledge infrastructure so we will know what's happening. People who want to contribute will be able to go somewhere and see who the organisations are, what they do and who they are, what their objectives are, how their money is being spent. So they will have that sense of confidence and security that their money is going into the right place and being well dealt with. We want to develop the fundraising capacity based on the principle that you will never have good giving unless you have good asking. So we need a professional, modern, up-to-date fundraising profession in the country. And finally, we are proposing to create a new National Social Innovation Fund, which we hope will be one of many new initiatives which will emerge out of this movement. If Ireland had the same level of trusted foundations per head of population as the UK has, just to use our nearest neighbour, we would have 800 such organisations operating in Ireland. We have approximately 43. So you see, in fact, in that level of activity, so we want to stimulate that activity in every way possible. And that is one where the government, the philanthropic sector, are going to come together to kick something off. And now, very briefly, the giving campaign will be launched in the autumn, and it is going to be run over 2 years. We have got the budget to do it in place, significant support from the department, significant support from the philanthropic sector, and that will issue the call to action. Now, purpose of it is to raise the level of fundraising and giving, not to a new agency which will take it, but rather so that every organisation that's in this business will feel the benefit. So it isn't that Forum is going to gain the benefit, it is going to create a benign marketplace for the actual charities, volunteer organisations and other activities to work within. So that is the purpose of that, to lift the tide for all the boats that are sailing on it. The second thing then we're going to do is have a series of conversations as we can. I greatly welcome the Taoiseach's remarks with our fiscal authorities in the country, Department of Finance, and we have a very enlightened and sympathetic minister, I must add. Create as benign a tax regime as we can for giving in Ireland. There is an international reality that there is a psychological and effective connection between enabling tax situations and people giving money to good causes, and we just got to explore that. It is not a methodology for people to avoid paying taxes or anything like that. It's how to stimulate an awful lot more giving into this sector. and also to decouple charitable giving or voluntary giving from what you might call business incentive-based tax schemes, which are quite a different thing and are related to the effective running of a business, whereas we're talking about philanthropic giving. Two quite different things. And we want to encourage major gift philanthropy. And we have to have in place a system whereby people can see to whom they are giving, can have ready access to information. One of the top priorities of the forum now that is moving into its implementation phase. The work on developing fundraising has already started. Fundraising Ireland is already advertising, has set up a certificate program and is now already advertising for candidates for it, and that's the beginning of creating the type of a fundraising, modern fundraising profession that Ireland really needs, and that this business really needs. And the Social Innovative Fund, the idea there will be broad and flexible. We're beginning the work of planning it now, and we'll be talking more about it as the year goes on. And it's a combination of government and philanthropy at the start. We would hope to stimulate quite a lot of money to come into it, and that money would be available then to enterprises in the not-for-profit sector, of an innovative character and of a sustainable character, which will help. It'll be a source of capital for this sector, which of its nature needs capital, and has, if anything, become over-reliant on governmental and public sources in recent years. The work has already started. As you saw today, the government support is there. The steering committee for implementation is in the process of being established. That's the next phase. That is in the sector. All of this is going to be run within the sector. Research for the National Giving Campaign is nearly complete. There's a budget of about 2.5 million available to do it, and we would hope that any euro spent in this campaign will at least double its value through contributions from the media organisations, which we'll be very specifically looking for. That this is about philanthropy, and we'd expect those organisations to be philanthropic contributors themselves as well. So we'd hope to get a very strong campaign, and we have already started talking to all of the major organisations that do fundraising, and in one kind or another, so that over the next 2 years that their own campaigns can perhaps be coordinated with this national campaign, so that there can be similarity of concepts and similarity of messages going out, so that the combination of all of these multitude of activities would create a very, very strong message indeed, and perhaps begin to get some of that societal change, or some of that hearts and minds transformation that we're looking for. We have, as I said, the new certificate in fundraising is already there. The Minister, Michael Noonan, has completed a consultation process, so we will be having significant talks with him and his officials through the ICTR network coming up to this next budget, to see what he has already signalled his willingness to decouple charitable fundraising from business tax efficiency, or whatever you want to call it, already. So that is a significant thing, and already agreed to certain methodologies which would make it easier for people to contribute in a tax efficient manner to their favourite charity or good cause. And the Social Innovation Fund will be established later in the year with initial funding of government philanthropic sources. So we're kind of well underway. And now that we've got to this stage, we intend to fast forward all of these activities. The key being to do it really well. We do believe that philanthropy is a concept. While fundraising is understood in Ireland and response to appeals are extraordinarily well understood in Ireland, the concept of planned giving and philanthropy, the concept that every successful business in Ireland, be it from a foreign source or be it a native Irish business, would give some small but defined percentage of its available profits each year to good causes is a concept that is not well developed in our country, but is feasible. We have a low corporate tax rate. It would not be an enormous burden to put an additional small amount. It's 12.5%. In other countries, they have in the 30%. Into a philanthropicing. And if Irish companies in a generality adopted that methodology to thinking, it would have a revolutionary impact. If the inward investment companies in Ireland that channel huge activities through our country developed their citizenship to a level that they got more involved in the quality and integrity of our societies and our communities and did some philanthropy in our country rather than just doing their business in our country, that would make an enormous impact on us. And these are the kind of messages we're going to drive through. We think they are legitimate and we think they are timely. It's happening in other countries around the world. And we think it has a terrific future in our country as well. And perhaps it is in a time of national difficulty is the best time to send out a message like this, because as the Taoiseach said, people have moved back a bit from this all-enveloping pursuit of wealth, both corporate and personal, to reflecting back on values of our society, values in communities, values in families, and values as individuals. And we hope that we can help stimulate that kind of qualitative change in our community and national life, which would lead to great benefits for enormous numbers of people in our society and lead to more employment in our country, hasten our national recovery, and in every possible way help the country forward and help our mental health generally as well. So thank you all very much for coming here.